Sasa Namkosa, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I was worried when you said Uko. Okay, we're live.
I was out of country. I'll be out of country. I can see Ray is here. Hi, Ray.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good man.
Morning, guys. We're ready now. And we're starting it shortly. All right. And we are live. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us for yet another Kenya Rugby Union interactive session. Today's session is a significant one in that we are announcing the incoming Kenya Sevens head coach. And without much further ado, I will invite the chairman of the Kenya Rugby Union, Mr. Odor Gangla, to proceed with the announcement. And after the announcement, we will open up the floor to a Q&A session. So, Bwana Chairman, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Michael, and for the kind introduction. Good morning to you all, fellow members of the board, our secretariat, and the members of the press. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you this morning, and I hope you're all keeping safe and observing the ministry regulations with regard to COVID. I think in this new world order, it's forced us to also make important policy announcements through the technology platforms. So it's not the same having a presser, but I hope in coming days we'll be able to have more face-to-face interactions. As you're well aware, the position of the Kenya Sevens head coach became vacant at the onset of COVID once we separated with our former coach, Paul Finney. And the board then took a decision in May to recruit a new coach. There has been a lot of uncertainty, and that still remains the case in terms of when we're going to resume, even from the World Series. We saw the postponement of the Olympics and also the stoppage of all our domestic competitions. But that doesn't mean we don't do anything and plan for the future. Kenya Sevens remains our single largest property. It's the one property that elicits very huge attention from the public, and not just in Kenya, but right across the world following the game. And it's very important to get the right leadership so that can take the team forward and enable it to achieve its full potential. The board took a decision in May to competitively source for a new head coach. We did advertise this position locally and internationally. We received a total of 14 applications for the job. We had an independent panel of 3 experts who then went through the shortlisting process, and they interviewed 4 candidates. And at the end of that interview process, they forwarded their recommendations to the board. We did receive this last week, and the board then took its time to review the way the process had been done, and also looked at the recommendations of the interviewing panel. And we've had obviously great interest in trying to ensure that this position is filled soon, and I think a lot of the public has kept tabs on the developments. And at the end of that process, I think the board has now made its decision in terms of whom to appoint for this role. And it's my pleasure to announce to you that the board has taken the decision to appoint Innocent Simiyu as the new head coach for the Kenya Sevens team. His assignment starts on 1st of October, and he's going to have an initial contract for a 2-year period. If you look at the rugby cycle, that takes us to the next Rugby Sevens World Cup, which is scheduled to take place in Cape Town in 2022. And we are quite excited to make this announcement today. And from the board, we wish to congratulate Innocent on his new role. He's not a stranger to this position, and he did a very good job in the 2 years that he was here. And the most important thing from a board decision-making perspective was to ensure that the process followed through to the end. So Innocent emerged top of the interviewing panel's recommendations. He was unanimously recommended by the panel as the best candidate for the job. And our role as the board really is to make decisions in the best and the highest interests of the game as a whole. And we've been entrusted to act as custodians of that particular role. And that is why we had no hesitation in appointing Innocent to this role. It is obviously public knowledge that we had our past engagement didn't end very well with Innocent because of the Paris incident, which remains topical in many people's minds. But everyone looks back, and we too, as the board, have looked back at the whole incident of what happened and how it was managed. And I think there have been a lot of lessons taken on board on both sides to ensure that we're able to manage such challenges better in future if that did arise. And so we're quite confident and comfortable to hand this responsibility to Innocent, and we are confident that he'll do the jersey and do the country proud. So with those comments, maybe I'll invite Innocent to maybe share his own reflections on this momentous day. Thank you.
Thank you, Honour Chairman, for the kind words, and I really appreciate this opportunity to serve the nation. I think it's another shot at it, and I'm very proud of being honored to be able to be the head coach of the Kenyan Sevens team. For me, I know the task is quite big. The challenges are there, looking at the current situation we are in as a country in terms of the COVID situation, and there not being enough tournaments leading up to the Olympics. But for me, I'm very grateful for being given this opportunity, and I will endeavor to do my best, and also to ensure that the players give their best for the nation, and we can hopefully have some good results after some good performance in the team. I don't have a lot of words to say, but just a big thanks to the KRD board, and to appreciate all the Kenyans who have always supported the team, who have worked with us through this journey, that we continue working, and we continue building this team and brand so that we can create something that is Kenyan, and hopefully get some good wins out of it. So back to you, Bonakia.
Okay, thank you. Maybe at this juncture, I'll hand it back to Mike so that we can field any questions from the media in terms of I imagine there's a lot of interest in this, so we are happy to take questions from the media. I think Mike is just trying to see how to work that out. Can you help? Are there any questions?
Yes, there are. We're going to start with NAMCO chairman. Sorry. Going to start with the chairman. Does NAMCOS get to choose his backroom staff, that is assistant and the other specialist coaches?
Yes, indeed. It's now a policy of the board which we implemented 2 years ago that once we choose the head coach then chooses his backroom staff. But importantly, we also want him to bring on board people who meet some basic criteria, who can actually add value to the program. But this is not a board decision. It is largely be the head coach choosing and coordinating with the director of rugby. So he'll have the latitude to choose whom he wants, provided that person meets some minimum criteria, which really relates to experience and to qualification from a coaching perspective.
Okay. Still a new chairman. Money has always been a contentious issue. So what would you say KRU has in plan both for the coach and players in terms of contracts and their remunerations?
Thank you. That's a good question. I think that money has been a problem, not just now, but for a long time. And it's not just a problem for Kenya. You can see the effect COVID has had on rugby across the world. And you've seen some of the richer unions also just reconsidering their own programs. So COVID has brought new challenges into the funding of sports across the world. And I think our obligation really as the board is to ensure we continue to deepen the engagements we've had with our respective partners, government, World Rugby, and also commercial sponsors, and also looking at ways and means to diversify KRU's own revenue. You may have seen yesterday we issued a new tender which people who are in the commercial space should take interest in, which is really looking at ways to monetize some of our digital assets and be able to create new revenue streams. A few months ago, we also started the Kenya Rugby TV, and I'm quite happy that we are making this announcement through the Kenya Rugby TV. And what it shows you really is deliberate actions by the board to build a more sustainable and diversified revenue base rather than just placing reliance on one particular sponsor or two sponsors to be able to fund the expenses of the team. And that really is the direction which we'll be taking. And we've had very positive engagements with sponsors. And I think once the return to play protocol is sorted out and the calendar internationally is also clarified, then you'll see a lot more movement on the commercial side. Thank you.
Great. Second last question for you, Chairman. When you started speaking earlier, you mentioned that we've already, the opening 4 legs of the World 7 Series have been cancelled. So what do we have in store for both Shujaa and Lionesses, given that we still have the Tokyo Olympics on the horizon?
That's a very good question and a pertinent one as well. At the moment, we are obviously in discussions with the Ministry of Sports about the return to play protocol. We did submit our comments last week to them, and we also had other discussions on specific matters. And really, the starting point will be, when does the ministry allow us to be able to just resume training, even if it's individual training and training at low numbers. We have also had meetings. We had a meeting with the clubs last week to look at KRU specific return to play protocols, just in anticipation of further guidance from the ministry, because I think everyone is keen to see rugby come back, but rugby must come back at the right time. As a union, we will certainly be focusing on our national teams, because the Olympics is still in the calendar, and late last week, World Rugby pronounced itself on some of the issues around the tournaments going forward, the possibility of regional tournaments in Q1 of next year, and then possibly building on to some events before the Olympics. So the important thing for us, given we've had close to 6 months of rugby, is to start early with the individual training and then training in small groups. I think a lot of training may be around the gym, doing gym sessions, and this will be for both Shujaa and Lionesses for a start. And then we'll also look to bring back Simbas once we kickstart the Olympic teams. So it's very much in our focus, but again, every step of the way, you have to work with the ministry in terms of getting approvals to embark on that particular step before you can embark on the next one. But we're quite confident that in Q4 we'll be able to resume training, at least for the national teams.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. That's all for you. Now we focus on NAMCOS. NAMCOS, congratulations on your appointment as a Shujaa head coach. First question. During your coaching hiatus, you were able to witness a number of young players don the national team colors and exert themselves quite well. When you consider the fact that you also have a number of experienced players who will be lifting their hands up for selection, what can you say about Kenya's talent pool? And do you think that Kenya is capable of consistently toughing it out with the big boys on the global stage?
Thank you, McKenna. I think Kenya is a powerhouse in sevens, and a lot of people appreciate the game in Kenya. And there are a lot of potential from the young guys and also the experienced guys. For me, right now, the task is to come up with the best team that can represent the nation. And the best team means that people will be able to meet the standards. So for us, age is not a factor, whether you're 40, 50, or whether you're 10 years old. So long as you can meet the standards that we have set in terms of the physical standards, the health standards, the game standards, in terms of the technical part of the game, and also the tactical, then then we will select you. So for us, whoever meets the standards and executes our plans very well, then they'll of course have a better chance of making the team.
Okay, second question. An abridged Sevens World Series, and the Tokyo Olympics are within sight. How do you intend to approach these two competitions?
This is a precarious situation we're in, because if you look at it, we have to have a plan to the Olympics, and then we have to now plan for the next cycle, which being the Olympics and also a peak in 2022 for the World Cup. So for us, the key thing right now is how do we get the players ready? At least if we can have 80% or 90% or even maybe 100% of our players meeting our standards by January, then we stand a good shot in terms of performance in the Olympics. So for now, we have to now also look, in case there are no tournaments, what can KIU do in terms of coming up, maybe us going for invitational tournaments, or maybe organizing some tournaments here locally, so that we can get our boys ready. So it's a tough time, but I know we have the capacity as a rugby fraternity to come up with solutions that can help us to perform in the Olympics.
Okay, and beyond that, what would you say your long-term targets and philosophy for the team are?
I've always advocated that we have to play this game a Kenyan way. And I believe for me, even during the interview process, I said we want to look at now awesome players. We want players who are agile in attack, agility in attack, so that we can increase our diversity in terms of our We want players who will be able to adapt very fast to the current situation and move on and execute. So the key focus will be just to push our Kenyan style of play that now we can use and win, and hopefully people will enjoy it when they see the team play.
Okay, thank you. One last question from Timothy Lemayan of Capital FM. Have you settled on your backroom staff?
Yes, I have settled. I don't know if I should say. I don't know if it's too early to say. What I share, can I proceed to say about my backroom stuff, or should I? Yeah, but they are there.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we'll be able to announce the full complement of the technical team.
Okay, sawa. Okay, this is the very last question, and then we are done with the press conference. Namcos, after Paris 2018, how do you say we could ensure that it doesn't happen again in future?
I know Paris was a very big scar for the nation, and of course, we have to apologize. What happened is not the best way to air our grievances. As I took responsibility as head of the program, but I believe the only way forward for sports, especially not only rugby, is proper communication and to ensure that we have proper governance structures and we're there to them. So from our end, and especially from my end, the biggest thing going forward is how do we communicate, how do we ensure information goes up and information comes down, so that we don't get to a point where players use that national stage to air their grievances. So I believe all these issues can be resolved if we communicate better, and then going forward, we will endeavor to ensure that we communicate better and we don't get to that point again.
Okay, thank you very much, Namcos and Chairman. I believe that brings us to the close of this press conference. I don't know if the Chairman has any closing remarks before we bid everyone farewell.
Yeah, I think just to close is to congratulate Namcos on his appointment once again, and to wish him the very best in his task. This is one of the toughest jobs in Kenya because of the high expectations that Kenyans place on this team. And also we've earned that right because of the past successes that this team has had in the national stage. So it's not a surprise to us. I would also like to thank our panelists who conducted the interview process. We had Peter Harding, who was proposed by World Rugby and is assisting us in our high performance center plans, and will be an integral part of rugby going forward. We had Thomas Odundo, who's a director of rugby, and we also had Paul Finney, who's our immediate former head coach. I think they did a very good job and sent their recommendation through to the board. And we're happy because it's a process that was quite credible and has led to this outcome. I'd also like to thank my colleagues on the board for the journey that we continue to walk. And we as a board want to assure the public that we'll fully support the team to ensure that it achieves its full potential. So we're excited about this new journey we are embarking on, and we trust that the public will also get behind us so that this team can achieve its full potential. Thank you very much also to the media for joining us to cover this on Kenya Rugby TV. I'm quite excited that we have our own TV platform as well, and we'll continue using this to communicate strategic decisions of the union. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. We wish you a lovely afternoon.
Okay, thank you.